One of the biggest rock and rap crossovers in music history was the iconic album Collision Course, which was created by the power alliance of Jay-Z and Linkin Park. As we concluded, Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park was actually the engine and mastermind of the project, having deep knowledge of both the rock and rap worlds. The project was an overall success and got a lot of love from fans, who were more than glad to buy the album to make it platinum, and in the end, Jay-Z was happy, Linkin Park was happy, and music fans got to see an unlikely duo. But it wasn't the end of rap-rock saga for Linkin Park and Mike Shinoda in particular. One of the hottest rap songs of 2006 to 2007 was actually made by Shinoda himself. Sure, it would be unfair to give all the credit to Mike, as he wasn't the only one who worked on that project. Back in 2004, Shinoda started his own hip-hop oriented project called Fort Minor. Shinoda gave an explanation of exactly why he chose this name for his new project. Fort represents the more aggressive side of the music. Minor can mean a few things. If you're talking about music theory, the minor key is darker. I wanted to name the album rather than having my name on the cover because I wanted people to focus on the music, not me. At first, Mike used this name for all his early collaborations with the members of an underground hip-hop group, Styles of Beyond, Ryu, and Tak. Even though Linkin Park was mostly an alternative rock group, it wasn't surprising to see Mike Shinoda create this group. The reason for this is Mike's love for rap music, which comes from his childhood. In multiple interviews, he expressed his love for hip-hop. I got Raised in Hell on vinyl when it first came out, and my favorite track that I'd play over and over was It's Tricky. That made me want to rap, for sure. That and Yo MTV Raps. Me and my friends used to swap cassettes, and Run DMC changed my life. It was the most hard rock rap album at that time. Shinoda also mentioned a number of other legendary hip-hop artists in his top 10 albums that changed my life interview for Metal Hammer magazine. Here he talked about Nas' It Was Written album and described it as a total classic and said that Nas' music wasn't up to that level again after that first album. And Run DMC's Raised in Hell project that we mentioned earlier. In 2011, Mike made his own Spotify playlist, which he named Hip Hop I Grew Up On, where you could find the greats of rap like Busta Rhymes, NWA, Ice Cube, LL Cool J, DMX, Outkast, and many more. Through years of working with Linkin Park, Mike infused his love for hip-hop into some of Linkin Park's most iconic songs, although he always wanted to go full hip-hop, and that's what he did with Fort Minor. Before Linkin Park, I pretty much only had hip-hop. At that time, my equipment was very cheap, and I didn't really know much about production or engineering. I've learned so much about production, songwriting, and people in the last few years. I think Fort Minor started about 2 years ago when I began to wonder what it would sound like to bring it full circle, to get back to my roots, but use all the tools I've learned since then. Shinoda explained his decision to create a separate hip-hop project in a short sentence. There were song styles and song topics that I wanted to attack that I felt I couldn't really do with Linkin Park. He added that he always wanted to delve into his hip-hop roots and develop that part of his artistic nature. I know what I do with Linkin Park is more simple, in order for it to work with the rock element, but I think in the future I'll have to show people that I'm capable of more. Mike and a number of guest artists started the process of creating Fort Minor's debut project shortly after Shinoda and Linkin Park finished working on the Collision Course mini-album. It was the Rising Tide album that was released on November 22, 2005 with the help of Warner Brothers and Mike's label Machine Shop Recordings. Technically, it wasn't the first creative output produced by Shinoda under Fort Minor's banner, as the Fort Minor We Major mixtape that was meant to hype up the audience prior to the debut album's release was actually out a month before the Rising Tide. The mixtape featured the aforementioned rap group Styles of Beyond, Apathy, Lupe Fiasco, Hollybrook, and many others. It mainly consisted of songs that didn't make it to the first album and mixes that would seem out of place on the Rising Tide album. The majority of the material from Fort Minor We Major was written by Mike back in 2003, before Linkin Park's collaboration with Jay-Z. DJ Green Lantern was heavily involved in the project and helped compose the mixtape. Mike also stated that the purpose of the mixtape was to put out his rap skills on display and share exclusive music that for one reason or another couldn't be used in the aforementioned album. In his own words, "That said, when you put me on a hip-hop beat, a different side of me comes out and you get different types of lyrics. Still, just like with anything, I know there are people who question it. So I'll say this, we're about to drop a Fort Minor mixtape with Green Lantern, and if you had any questions about my skills on the mic, cop the mixtape. Album verses are for the masses, and mixtape verses are different." The mixtape did a great job hyping up the upcoming Fort Minor release and was well received by fans. The Rising Tide, which came a month later, also had an interesting background story. Half a year prior to the album's release, Mike Shinoda announced that none other than Jay-Z, who previously worked with Linkin Park, would be an executive producer of the project. There's also spoken commentary by Jay-Z at several points throughout the album that Shinoda included in the final versions of the songs Introduction and Before in stereo. Brad Delson, a guitarist from Linkin Park, also helped Mike with his solo album and served as A&R. Interestingly enough, Shinoda challenged himself to play all the instruments besides strings and percussion and write all the lyrics for Fort Minor's first album by himself. Mike was seriously hyped up about Fort Minor's first release, as he told MarketWire, "My bandmates have encouraged me to share this music with the world, and now that the record is almost finished, I can't wait." It was understandable, as it was his first official attempt to not only be the sole leader of a new project, especially given the rather experimental nature of Fort Minor, and there was no guarantee on how Linkin Park's fanbase would react to it. Mike himself described the album as not straight hip-hop, but not rock at all. He also expressed his hopes that fans of his work with Linkin Park would enjoy it. In August 2005, the first song from The Rising Tide was leaked. It was a song called Remember the Name. Mike responded to the situation by thanking all his fans for their huge support and stating that it wasn't him or the record label that leaked the song. "I didn't do it, but I suppose now that it's out there, I'm glad you're hearing it and liking the song." At the time, the leaked song helped fans get an idea of what style of music they should expect from Fort Minor's debut album, but it didn't make much of a buzz at the time. It was the song Where'd You Go, which also became the fourth single from the debut album, that caught the fanbase by storm. It peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, boosted the album's sales by 45%, and later won a Ringtone of the Year nomination at the 2006 MTV Video Music Awards. Funnily enough, it wasn't the song that defined Fort Minor's success. The Rising Tide had another memorable song, Kenji, which describes the experiences of a Japanese-American family during the Japanese-American internment during World War II. However, that song also wasn't the one. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name. Those lyrics are pretty much known to anyone who was a young adult, maybe even child, back in 2006 to 2007. That song, which was leaked and went unnoticed prior to the album's release, the song that failed to chart in the year of its release, was now featured in the video game NBA Live 2006, which undoubtedly helped the song go viral amongst younger fans. Later, the song was used by the NBA in 2 consecutive playoffs from 2006 to 2007, which solidified the song's legendary status. This song was everywhere on the internet. Every sports highlight edit, Call of Duty or Gears of War montages on YouTube had the song playing in the background. Workout music. Every gym had Remember the Name in their playlists for the extra motivational hit. And basically every sports event in the USA in 2007 opened with the iconic 10% bar. The song was released as a single and reached platinum status in 2009, and in 2018, the RIAA certified the song 4 times platinum. In 2017, the streaming service Pandora released data they gathered on the most popular workout stations on their service. Remember the Name turned out to be the most streamed song on one of their top stations, Rap Strength Training, a staggering 12 years after its initial release. At that time, the song had been played at least 477 million times. The song's success is really difficult to explain. It's outlived Where'd You Go, which charted at top 5, and most people would recognize Remember the Name now over Where'd You Go. But just like any other viral thing in the world, there were at least 2 factors that could have played a part. First was the aforementioned single Where'd You Go was a massive hit and potentially attracted more attention to other singles like Remember the Name. And 2, the song was hitting that lose yourself motivational note that seemed to be extremely popular among listeners back in those days on the internet. And 3, of course, it was a memorable, upbeat, and very catchy song with easy to understand lyrics at the end of the day for the mass population. Mike Shinoda has his own theory on the song's success. That was one of those songs that when I did it with Ryu and Tak from Styles of Beyond, I think that it was really just a good feeling to get back together with those guys. I've been friends with those guys for about 10 years and this was one of, Remember the Name was one of those songs that when we did together just felt natural. Felt like, friends getting together, hanging out, recording some music, and that's a good feeling. I think that's why the song came out the way it did. You can tell on the song Remember the Name that we were having fun with it and being able to brag on it. Sadly, Shinoda didn't plan to release any kind of follow-up for a side project Fort Minor, so all the momentum was kind of gone after a couple of years. In 2015, Shinoda released a non-album single, Welcome, which was well received by fans who felt very nostalgic about the release. Mike Shinoda releases new music under his name since 2017, and there are no guarantees for any new projects coming under Fort Minor's banner. In an interview for The Green Room, Mike commented, "I'm Fort Minor the way Trent Reznor is 9 Inch Nails. Like 9 Inch Nails is a group effort, but if Trent doesn't do it, it's not a thing." Time will tell whether we'll ever see anything new from Fort Minor, although it's clear as day that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have Mike Shinoda's songs embedded in their memory and potentially don't even know that he was the one behind it. All thanks to one song that logically shouldn't have been successful and initially wasn't successful.